Real success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the Hitstreak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. And joining me in the Hit Lab today, folks, somebody that I've known for quite some time, and I'm really excited to dig deep because we speak the same language, and much of what we know about the podcast world, I learned from this gentleman sitting across from me today. So let me properly introduce him, shall I? Check it out, folks. He is a sought-after keynote speaker and comedian, and he has been for quite some time. He is the founder of the Podcast Launch Lab. Folks, help me welcome the dude, my guy, Sebastian Rusk. How we doing, baby?
Nick Hyder, how we doing?
Dude, I'm having a great time now that you're here.
Yeah, man, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, dude.
Well, we got a lot to get into, and I gotta give my audience what they like, because you said, how you doing? And I'm great because you're here, but I am unstoppable. That is my answer every time. I am unstoppable.
I love that. I am highly favored and anointed.
That's right, baby.
Hey,
That's what I'm talking about.
Let's go.
All right, man. So you got a lot going on, a whole lot going on. I feel like you're in a plane every other day.
Feels like it.
Favorite airport? Let's just start right there.
A private one.
Yes, that's right, baby.
Yeah, a private one. Still, I think I've been in one. That's about it. Yeah, going down to the Bahamas. Outside of that, I got a little taste of what it's like to pull up to the place, walk in with a security guard, and walk onto the plane. Yeah,
I love it. That's right. Time. And when anybody said, "Hey, Sebastian, what time's your plane leave?" What'd you say? When I get there?
Yeah, it is. They say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, dude. So first of all, your branded T-shirts, which are world famous. You're wearing one right now for those of us that are watching with us today. And it's funny because they say, and people actually come in here and they see it on the wall over here from when you were here with Covey. Yeah. Podcasts suck. Why did he write that? Well, there's a missing piece.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have one.
That's right.
So when I got introduced to you, I feel like, well, I know you were way ahead of the game. All right. You were ahead of your time, because at the time when I met you, I didn't even, now I think everybody needs a podcast. And back then I thought nobody needed a podcast. I didn't get it yet. So I feel like you're one of the godfathers of podcasting, if I'm being honest, man.
Appreciate that.
Well, so how did you get in the world of podcasting, man? I don't know if I've ever asked you that.
So I started in 2010 with my first company, the digital agency, Social Buzz TV. And I had a podcast because I knew that it was on a platform called Blog Talk Radio. So it was like an internet radio show, but you could take the RSS feed and put it on SoundCloud that would allow you to distribute it elsewhere. So I always had it. I wasn't consistent with it, but I grew up in a radio station. So my dad was a DJ for 30 years. So I grew up cutting all the kids' tracks for the kids' programs on the weekends in exchange for a Happy Meal. So I had always had it in my blood to be on air, had no desire to follow in his footsteps at all. And after doing 6 years of Social Buzz and the bow tie and my MC business and all, I just got to a point where I just did not enjoy the work at all.
I forgot about the bow tie.
Yeah, man. The bow tie was, that
was your thing.
It was my thing. It was wildly uncomfortable. I swapped it out for T-shirts and Jordans, but
that's my kind of guy, right?
But
there.
It was, bow ties never go out of style because bow ties are never in style. So that was kind of but I also wanted to be memorable too. And when you're emceeing events and being able to take my level of energy into a room and you have a bow tie on, like it's a package deal that's attractive to event planners and bookers.
That's right.
Like are we just going to have Bill from accounts do it? He does a great job with the announcements at the holiday party. Or are we actually going to hire a pro that can come in here and get this show on time, keep it on time, cut time, entertain people, infuse the audience with energy? And the bow tie was that added element on there. But in 2016, I continued to get this nudge, like there's more here, but you need to become who you need to be in order to step into that role. And I kept getting that nudge, and that gut feeling is God's whisper. Dolly Parton was, or Winona Ryder, or one of the country music stars said one time. But
Winona Judd.
yeah,
That's
there we
right.
go. There we go. That gut feeling is God's whisper, and it's that constant nudge of knowing. And I had done personal development work before. I'd been going to Tony Robbins and gone to the Landmark Forum and really started to understand the conversations that we have in this human experience of what really happened and then our story of what happened. And we get those two things mixed together, and then we wonder why life is so chaotic. And I was so interested in that conversation because majority of people live their lives according to the story that they've written. And it's not even true. And then they take it a step further and enroll other people into that story.
Preach.
And then they start living it like it's an actual reality. But when you're looking at what happened and you just answer the question of what happened, and I wasn't able, I started to get to the bottom of this conversation, but I was the personal development guy that went out and went to Tony Robbins for 3 days and then came home and didn't do anything with it at all. And in 2016, the nudge was even more. It was like, okay, man, well, we pulled ourselves out of the dirt. We were able to build a brand from nothing and build a personal brand. I met Gary Vaynerchuk in 2011, and he really was instrumental in me figuring out what I would be doing next. But I still had this nudge. It was like everyone was starting to be a social media expert. I wanted to go the opposite way of the crowd, but I still had that nudge of there's something else there, and you're kind of you're still kind of a jerk. Like there's something there that needs to be worked on. And I met a girl on a dating app in March of 2016, and I met her for a beer up in Fort Lauderdale on March 1st, 2016. And she said, I'm part of this personal development course. And I was like, let me tell you about personal development. Tony Robbins 2 times, the Landmark Forum. But in reality, I was a personal development junkie that just consumed but took no action after that. And she said, I'm involved with this personal development course right now. It's no longer around anymore. It was called Gratitude Training. Taught you nothing about being grateful. And I was extremely resistant, which we usually are, and most are, if you haven't found the path. And the path is healing and addressing trauma and going back to the beginning of the story where you can really start to dig in to what actually happened, not your story of what happened. So I was extremely resistant to and I was also in a place where I was kind of in a valley with business. I just finished an MC gig, but business was kind of like unforeseen. I was in a tough spot, and I wasn't going to invest in another course at this time. So a couple weeks later, she signs me up for this course, and she's like, I just paid for it. So you're going to go next weekend. It's Friday through Sunday, 3 days, and just show up. And so I did. And I walked in, and I, again, extremely resistant. I was the guy that would walk out in the middle of the course.
Yeah.
Disrupt the class. But what I started to learn was that it's said a lot now, and it's regurgitated, and regurgitated motivational quotes are not my favorite forte. I make fun of them a lot, write a lot of material around them. But the instructor came on stage and he said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I said, wow. I never even thought about it like that. Mm-hmm. And when the gear started to turn a little bit, and I started to download what he was saying here, it related a lot back to what I started to learn in Tony Robbins and the Landmark Forum specifically, which was what happened, and then your BS story of what happened on here. And things started to come back a little bit, and I thought, what story am I writing? So if I asked what happened in my life, my parents got divorced. That's it. My dad getting remarried, my mom leaving, this, that, how I felt about the situation has nothing to do with it. It's all story related. So I was able to get to the core of what I was doing. So this first part 1 was just, let's just find out what's going on with Sebastian. And then part 2, we're going to spend 5 days, Wednesday through Sunday. We're going to dig in and we're going to rip it out. Yeah. And we're going to figure it out. We're going to go back to the beginning of the story.
Love it.
Because what needs to happen in order to truly transform your life, radically transform your life, is that you need to become 100% accountable for everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen in your life. And until that happens, life is a very challenging place to be because it's mom's fault and it's dad's fault. But you don't know what they did to me. No, I don't. And I'm sure that it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But you're here now. And remember, I always like to say, and that's one thing it really taught me was this personal accountability and ownership. It was time to stop blaming dad.
You just described the difference between a victim and a survivor.
Correct. And I just knew that I didn't want to, what I was doing wasn't working any longer. It wasn't serving me any longer.
That's fantastic.
And being able to go in and make a decision to forgive someone has absolutely nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. It just does. And if we take it a step further, true forgiveness is waiving the right to ever bring it up again. And most would argue that point. Because again, you don't know what they did to me.
That's right.
Other than, hey, you know what? I forgive you.
Yeah.
The end. That's
right.
just where it at. So fast forward getting through that course, two things happened. Number one, I didn't hate what I was doing with the MC work and the social buzz and all that. I didn't hate that. I hated myself.
Yeah.
And when you hate yourself, you hate everything in path. You're not loving yourself. You're not investing in yourself emotionally and actually doing the work required. Then, of course, it feels like, absolute, complete, controlled chaos most times. But I came out of that fully accountable with my life. I picked up the phone. I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I got my power back. I love you. You're the only dad I got. We may not always agree. We may not have the closest relationship, but I love you. And you're the only dad I got. And we have a relationship. And I forgive you for whatever I may have made up along the way. But for 35 years, I've been blaming you for a lot of stuff that I know I probably didn't need to. And most people don't know how to receive that conversation, especially the older generation. But the conversation wasn't for him. It was for me.
Right.
So when I came out of this, I took almost a whole year off, lived on like a line of credit. The girl broke up with me in the middle of the course. So as if personal development isn't hard enough, we're going to throw a little heartbreak in the mix with all this. So when I say I was ripped wide open and nothing made sense, I'd spent 6 years building a brand from nothing and trying to emulate and be something that I didn't even know what it was. It wasn't even a specific person. And I came out of there and had the ability to step into my power, and it all changed. Everything changed because I was now accountable for how I was showing up, realizing that nobody cares if you shift or not. It is your duty and your responsibility to step in to the greatest version of yourself. I have gifts and talents. I am highly favored, anointed, and blessed than most. I am so, so grateful for that opportunity. Who am I to not go out into the world and do something great with it? So when I got out of this course, I said, okay, now it's time to dust myself off. The girl left me. I got through the course. That was painful. I was worn out. But after a month of laying in bed eating double cheeseburgers from McDonald's and chain smoking Marlboro Lights, I was like, this is not working. We've got to get back in the game. So I went and rented a desk at a co-working space. And I ran into an old friend that had an internet radio show. And I said, so how's that going? And she said, great. And I said, how do you know? And she couldn't answer that question. And I said, you could just start a podcast and record it from your house and avoid all this, whatever you're paying every week for this internet radio show that goes here and there. If it's not on Sirius Radio, it's not an internet satellite radio show. So you're probably spinning your wheels. And she said, I don't know how to start a podcast. And she goes, and I said, well, she said, can you show me how to start a podcast? And I was like, we're in the elevator riding down. I'm walking into her car and I'm like, actually, I can. She goes, you should create a solution to help people start a podcast. And I thought, bingo, there it is. That's the opportunity to leave the digital marketing world and still stay in it, as much of an oxymoron as that is. But I walked to the car and I went back up to my rented desk and I mapped out on 3 sheets of paper what would become the Podcast Launch Lab, which is a turnkey podcast launch solution to take you from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less with our proven podcast launch solution. And Nick, when I say I literally have not looked back since that, I had to phase out social buzz and the work I was doing. I wasn't just going to do a hard stop on the clients, but it was a gradual process of saying, hey, my heart and head aren't in it anymore. I don't feel comfortable taking money from you. And most importantly, I don't want to do the work. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
I'm really going to focus on this podcast thing. And there was a ton of resistance from friends, close to me, people in my network. Nobody wants a podcast. Nobody knows what a podcast was. And here we are almost 8 years later. We've turned it into a multiple six-figure business. I travel all over the place. I speak, I tell jokes, doing comedy, and I launch podcasts. And if it's not those three things, I just don't leave the house. And at the same time, still wildly committed to the path of healing and continuing. Because healing, I tell myself every day when I turn the shower on cold at the end, it's the worst part of my day. I say I'm committed to the work.
That's right.
And some days I got to remind myself what that work is, and it's showing up. It's showing up every day. It's getting on an airplane. It's getting in a room. I just need one person to hear something that came out of my mouth and go, because you said that, I went out and did this, and that's what fills my cup.
I want to thank all of our loyal fans that spread across all 50 states and 14 different countries. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, help us keep spreading the word, right? Share your favorite episodes with friends and make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Hitstreak on all digital platforms. Thanks again, and we look forward to more. All right, there was so much gold in there. Let's just stay there and unpack that for a little bit, because first of all, taking responsibility of your life is the only way that you can change anything, because you've given up the ability to change or fix or repair or do anything when it's somebody else's fault and they're to blame, right? So I wrote in big capital letters, and I'm the only one that can read it because that's how all my writing is. It says, take action. And because we got to go to seriously, you've been in the podcast world since podcast conception. I'm knee deep in it. I fully believe in it. I'm totally immersed for the last 5 years. But and that was, there was a lot of guys that were hundreds or even thousands of episodes in it before I was. And those guys are all giants in the game. Now, all of them that are still doing it. But you were in there, you were talking to me about podcasts, and I didn't even really know what a podcast was. You were so I don't know anybody in the game, is what I'm saying, that's been doing it as long as you have, that has the tenure and all the knowledge and everything else. And I got so many questions about RSS feeds. I want to talk to all the folks about, you have so much knowledge about what it, that turnkey operation of all the choices that you help them make that they don't even know they got to make yet.
Right.
It's if I wanted to start a band, there was an episode of Full House when Stephanie was going to start a band back in the day. Do you remember that? And they all bombed because they were so worried about what they were going to wear.
Yeah.
And Uncle Jesse kept saying, no, you got to rehearse. And they all they wanted to do is shop. And I feel like that's the way a lot of podcasters are.
That's a great analogy. It is. It really, really is. We spend so much time. Marcus Aurelius says that one thing that fools have in common is that they're always getting ready. And I think that's what a lot of people try and do. It's I'm going to do this. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Tony Robbins says people find themselves shooting all over themselves. Because
awesome.
Nobody cares what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Nobody cares what you used to do.
Yeah.
They care what you're actually doing, but more importantly, what is in it for them and how are they impacted based on what you're doing on here. And I found a gaping hole in the market. Gaping hole. People didn't even know what the hell a podcast was, let alone where do I start?
I feel like iTunes and Spotify should be paying you a royalty at this point because of how many people you've introduced to their platforms.
2002 was the beginning of podcasting. And it was created, the name was coined because it was a it was named Podcast because it was a cast to be played on an iPod. Dating myself a little bit here.
No, but I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was 2003, and it had a little bit of okay, what is this? Is this okay, it's another piece of content. But a podcast, by definition, is an audio file uploaded to the internet to be consumed auditorily. And then it kind of faded out a little bit. And then it had a big resurgence in 2008 with that podcast Serial about the serial killer. That, by the way, they unpacked that entire case and the case got overturned and the guy got out of prison because of the podcast. So, and then I met Gary in 2011 and it was content. And I was speaking, a foreign language to people. They still didn't understand it.
I agree.
I think that, 2019 and then COVID coming around really just woke everyone's eyes up. Either they had nothing else to do, but now it seems everywhere you turn around, you can't swing a dead cat and wait, don't tell me you're a speaker or an entrepreneur and you're writing a book. And I think there's a lot of noise out there in the influencer space, but at the same time, I think that everybody's sick of the guru.
Yeah.
And of the influencer. there's a joke of, define an influencer. It's someone who's paid to spread lies on the internet.
There's no qualification
zero barrier to entry.
Yeah, it's right. And there's nobody's really what as far as this is how do you know if I'm in the 8th grade, I've obviously done everything to get there.
Right.
I passed 7th grade to get to 8th.
Right.
There's a lot of folks out there that haven't accomplished a lot yet. They dream about a lot, but you still have to go out and put up a track record before you can really.
Well, that's what I've been able to just putting in the reps on here, and just where I'm a nobody trying to be somebody and make my mama proud. That is, and when you can keep that level of humility there, there is zero ego at all. I know a little bit more than most do about podcasting, and I have the gift of communicating.
Dude, too, one of the things that I take pride in about myself is something that my dad taught me, and it was a story where somebody said he was going to whoop his butt, and my dad's friend chimed in, "You shouldn't do that." And he said, "What, you don't think you can win?" He says, "No, you'll probably kick his butt, but it's going to take you all day." And that's me. Is I'm willing to put in the reps, and what it takes is what it takes, and as long as it takes is as long as it takes. And that's one of my favorite things about you, man. Is you've been so consistent. So you consistently show up, and dude, quite frankly, you're killing it, man. Dude, you're doing, seriously, how many people get to speak on stages on, you're doing cruises and everything else? It's freaking awesome, dude.
Normally when a comedian has a gig on a cruise ship, his career's over. So it worked out all right.
That's right. That's right. But the whole mentality about it is when you're going and you're speaking at these places and working with these teams and everything else, is you're making it so that the team wins.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's the pay to play model where you're literally going in and investing into those people, or you don't get a return on that. You're not saying, "Hey, pay me to show up." You're going there and you're delivering value and you're getting paid on that value. And that's such an authentic and ethical way to do business. Yeah. It's the best way to do business. And you're just rare these days, man, to do that.
I appreciate that. You're rare too, Nick. I like you. I think you keep you around as a friend. I lost my train of thought on what I was going to say, but that rarely happens. I'm very rarely am I at a shortage for words on here.
Well, it's just the way that you do business. You do it the right way.
I know what I was going to say.
It's for other folks.
I remember now. So I stay in the lane of integrity selling, and integrity selling says that you sell someone something because it's in their best interest, not yours. And I've always occupied in the lane of integrity. That should be a no-brainer. Unfortunately, it's not. But so I've stayed in that lane, and I spend more time talking people out of starting a podcast than I do starting one, because I know exactly who my ideal avatar is.
That's it.
Of the person that I want to be able to work with. It is a successful business owner, 7-figure entrepreneur, busy, doesn't have time to figure it out themselves, has no desire to figure it out themselves, wants to work with the best, and wants to get there as fast as possible. I've been able to dial that person in. And if it's not within that avatar, I wrote a book. I do talks all over the country. I have a YouTube channel that has an entire library of anything you could ever wonder.
The YouTube channel is awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So I try to serve both components, on there, but I try to discourage people from going at it alone.
Yeah.
Because I've identified 14 steps in the podcast launch process. And could you technically go do all those steps and launch it? Yeah, you can. But the sustainability of the work involved with it. I mean, could you imagine pulling this all off for yourself, dude, and then go and spend the rest of the week editing?
Yeah, I don't do my taxes for a purpose because somebody else is really good at it, and I'm staying in my lane and do what I'm good at. You know? And I used to do a lot of all of my own editing on my content and everything else. I wanted to know, so if I hired it out, I could hire effectively, because I didn't really know how to hire for it.
Sure.
So I didn't, what skill set was needed. So I figured out real quick I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I figured out real quick that, man, I spent 3 hours for 2 videos.
Sure.
And how many people could I have helped and deals could I have closed in that 3 hours?
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I did learn a lot of respect for the folks and those guys and what they were doing. And I learned what agencies couldn't serve me, and I learned what agencies could.
Yeah. Well, you want to make sure that you've got support around you with the work that you're going and doing, and me being able to, the real icing on the cake is, well, number one, we create a strategy and a brand for your podcast that you can get excited about, but that you can also bring out into the world, into your business, and start meeting people that you want to do business with. Mm-hmm. Well, number one. Number two, having a podcast solves all of your social media content problems.
Come on.
One podcast episode, multiple pieces of content, which you're probably not posting anyway. Problem solved. And oh, by the way, you can email, you can interview your prospects, you can interview people you want to build relationships with. One of the main talks I give, in fact, the one I'm giving tomorrow, is how starting a podcast can radically change your life and your business if you let it. And I just share some personal experience with it, but then I also give some case studies of exactly how you can go out and go and do those things. So it's powerful. And I don't think that it's going anywhere. I think it's the new radio. I think that YouTube is the new TV and we've got streaming. I think this stuff's here to stay. I think AI is going to come along and make this stuff easier to use, but I don't know about replacing anything at all, because you're not going to replace the human experience. I mean, not as far as we know. I mean, I don't even think we want that, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that big time. And like literally, I was just thinking about this. Like, so I have a little mastermind that I do. It's just something a little free virtual event I do once a month with the Hit Lab for their clients, leads, prospects, so on and so forth, community. And I bring on guests all the time to talk about stuff. And one of the things we talk about big, it's the Brand Accelerator Mastermind is what we call it. But podcasting is something that we talk a lot about.
Yeah,
I like that. I bring you in on a guest later this year,
Let's do it.
To help educate on that, because again, are you cool? I would love to kind of go through your turnkey process on. I want people to truly understand how simple yet complex it is. Like, you got to make the right decision. I picked all the wrong RSS feeds when I started because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, God, look at all the options you have, and some are paid and some are not, and which one do you get? And I noticed some promote the podcast and some don't, because I was getting emails and I'm like, well, what, the email stopped? Oh, we changed RSS feeds. And I learned a lot. We learned a lot of lessons when we first started about a lot of things. So like, let's go into, so first of all, you mentioned your avatar, right? And I think that's really important. So obviously, for me, my podcast is the sharpest networking tool in my tool belt by far, and it's monetized at this point, right? So, which is great. But in the beginning, when it hadn't, there was so many people that are on that wall that I wanted to have conversations with, and I really didn't have a reason to get on their calendar until we had the show. And now all of a sudden, because it was of certain production quality that I knew that they were attracted to, they would entertain coming on, and it turned into a thing. And now we're doing business together. There's a lot of business relationships that culminated from that.
Sure.
So it's like, you go to networking groups to meet winners, but like, when you go to those network groups, it's the one-to-one conversations where the relationships really start to grow. And like, this is like the ultimate one-to-one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the ultimate one-to-one.
It really is.
And then you get associated with them forever because it lives on the internet.
Right. Well, you did something for them too.
That's right.
Yeah. And they don't forget that.
That's right.
People always remember you making it all about them.
That's right. That's exactly right. So you mentioned the avatar of is there any other avatars? So the most common thing we hear is, dude, everybody's got a podcast. I'm like, well, everybody's got a guitar, but Broadway's full.
Yeah.
That's
a great example. Yeah, it really, really is. Everybody's got a car too, but people don't stop driving.
That's right.
And there's also a lot of books out there. People going to stop writing books?
That's right.
Probably not. So for the amount of podcasts that are starting on a daily basis, there's probably 3 times that amount stopping. So you got that start-stop process, but we're also living in this creator economy where every brand is starting to create content to be able to stay present with where the eyeballs are at. And right now, the eyeballs are in the newsfeed. They're not on the radio. They're not on the television. They're not on a billboard. They're in the newsfeed.
That's right.
And they're in content. That's why brands that are really understanding what they should be doing are creating a content space in their office and being able to put together some sort of game plan where they can remain relevant because of their content, not trying to figure it all out. Because the days of our business is strictly referrals, I understand that. Mine is too.
Yeah.
But the other component is my content. I don't think that the referral stuff would be as lucrative if my content wasn't consistent, because I'm showing up every day, 7 days a week. I'm talking about something, usually about podcasting and or about life.
People are spending 6, 8, 10 hours a day looking at a device like this. It's my opinion that if you don't show up on their news feed, you lose your customers to somebody that is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you don't exist.
They can't do business with you if they don't know you're there, right?
Correct. And we're getting to a point where, I used to joke back in the day, it's like, if you're not on Facebook, you're shady. We're getting to a point now that if you're not creating content, like why?
Yeah.
Like why not?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like where are you good? Like have you made it? Because that's how I look at it. That's what I tell myself every single day. It's like some days I just don't feel like it.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, cool, man. Well, have you made it? Because I don't think so. I drive a Chevy Equinox. I'm a humble man.
That's
you know what I mean? I'm not anywhere near where I know what's possible of where it's at. So I continue to be able to show up. But brands doing that same thing. A podcast allows them to show up every day or show up consistently so that people know who you are.
The Hit Streak is powered by our partners at HitLab Creative Studios. Whether it's launching your brand new podcast, rebranding your current podcast, or taking advantage of any of their other content packages specifically for your social media needs, the HitLab is a one-stop shop for you. Visit hitlabstudio.com for more. So walk me through. We've got the photo. So we get past the. We know who our avatar is. We've convinced them that everybody needs a podcast. Because people don't have to listen. They can turn it off. They don't. You know what I mean? It's not like they have to do anything. And the people that another common question we get is like, well, can you post too much or can you put out too much content? I'm like, well, those people ain't buying nothing anyway. So if the people that unfollow you, they ain't buying nothing. You can't help them out. They don't want your help.
Correct. Well, that's a great point. But I also say, why don't you get really good at just making one post a day? Mm-hmm. Why don't you get really good at putting one episode out a week? Because I had clients come to me, can we do 2 episodes a week? Hey, listen, let's get really good at 1 episode a week. Then we can start swinging for the fences.
That's right.
And do multiple episodes on a weekly basis. But there is enough work in and of itself with just 4 episodes a month that most aren't going to get above and beyond that. When you're looking at quality and quality production and quality content of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think, when it's not looked at as, well, just a podcast, it's looked at like that's our main networking tool. Like that gets us in front of people that we want to do business with.
So like fundamentally, I feel like you just have all this framework down better than everybody else. So, when they're launching their podcast, you've worked with them, they've come up with some form of a concept, right? So it solves a lot of problems for them, whether it be content or whatever it may be. We've identified.
Most don't have it though. Most have no idea. They come to us and go, I want to start a podcast. No idea where to start. I blow people's mind when I'm like, you ever thought about interviewing your prospects and then converting those podcast guests into clients? And they're like, what?
That's right.
To me, it's second nature.
Yeah.
And people automatically understand it and think like, I didn't even think about that. So that's usually, so step one of I want to start a podcast. Step one, what do I do? Why are you starting a podcast?
Right.
Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Simon Sinek says, people don't care what you do. They care why you do it.
Right.
So why are you starting a podcast in the first place? If it's just because everyone else does, let's just pack it up and go home.
That's right.
If there's a reason, we want to be able to drastically impact our bottom line and our sales with it. We want to grow relationships. We want to get our content game in check. Mm-hmm. We want to get our message out of what we're doing and help people improve their life, business, and overall, human experience. Cool. You're starting to get dialed in on what your why is, but only you can go and figure that out. You're not going to hire someone to come in and tell you what your why is.
Right.
So step one is like, why are you doing what you're doing? And then the next is, what are we going to call this thing? Like, what are we going to call the show? How are we going to put a brand together that complements our company and our personal brand and come up with something we can get excited about that resonates with people? Mm-hmm. You're a baseball guy. Of course, your podcast called The Hitstreak.
Yeah,
it just makes sense on there. Mine's called Beyond the Story. Why? Because I like telling people's story. I like going a little bit further than just what the actual story is on there, digging a little bit deeper. My other podcast, I don't recommend having 2 podcasts at all. Disclosure. Is Podcast Suck. It's a podcast about starting and producing a podcast. Probably makes sense to have a podcast called Podcast Suck.
Absolutely.
So once you dial in your why of what you're doing and you figure out what you want to call it, what kind of show is it going to be? You're rolling solo. You're going to interview people. You're going to interview prospects. What does the content game look like from the episodes that you're producing on there? And once you've got that dialed in, then now it's time to go, okay, what's it look like to start putting together the cover art, the background music, writing a script for an intro, an outro, a promotional teaser, and get at least 2 episodes recorded. You don't want to launch with just 1 episode. It's very anticlimactic to do that.
Yeah.
Because especially if it's good, people are like, I want more. So you want to come out of the gate strong, and you can do 2, 3, 4. We do 2. 2's a fair number. And then we automatically go right into 4 episodes a month. Mm-hmm. So, the important thing is that once you've got all that stuff dialed in, you want to make sure that you are doing an interview and recording blitz out of the gate. You want to be so far ahead of your schedule. Because if you think that you're going to come in every Monday and go, well, who are we interviewing this week, Jim? It's a non-sustainable game plan.
Yeah.
Because what happens is it goes from being fun to do to feeling like work. And when it starts to feel like work and it's not fun, we quit. That's just the way human nature works.
That's right. And, from the moment that we dropped my first episode, it was a Tuesday. It was very important to me. I told the team, I was like, we can't miss a Tuesday, because and I used the Wally Pipp story. Wally Pipp was the first baseman for the New York Yankees, and he took a day off. Lou Gehrig was the substitute. Lou Gehrig played the next 2,100 games at first base, or more than 2,100 for the New York Yankees. So Wally Pipp lost his job in one day. So I'm like, dude, once on Tuesday, if we're not there yet, I'm going to be one of the things that people do on Tuesday. They're going to download that episode and stream that episode and listen to that episode, watch that episode. And the moment we miss, they got to find something else to do on Tuesday, and they might not come back. So that the consistency was good, and we always stay like for my show. It's we keep usually 6 to 8 episodes in the can. Yeah, just because again, you travel all over the place, so getting you here might not coordinate with when I need to film it to launch it, and so on and so forth. So we want that catalog in there so that we can breathe, and I can still be Nick outside of the podcast desk,
Exactly. Well, each episode is giving you what you should be producing micro content from from each episode, which you guys do a great job of doing. That allows you to build a content catalog. Mm-hmm. So if you're 8 episodes in the bag already and you're good, you don't have to record for another couple months.
That's right.
You've still got content from past episodes you can post on any given day.
That's right.
And content is king, and it always will be. Marketing is queen and she runs the house, but that's a whole different conversation.
I love that, dude. That's awesome. So, all right. So how do, a lot of, another question that gets asked a lot is, I'm like, hey, we got to look into the RSS feeds. I'm like, well, what is that? All right. So let's define what RSS feed in layman terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because every company, every product has an avatar of who they appeal to. So obviously all the RSS feeds have I would imagine they would have strengths based on the podcaster, maybe?
No, they're all the same.
They're all the same?
They're all the same. So in order for a podcast to become a reality, the podcast obviously has to be recorded. You edit the episode. If you're not editing your episode, just stop. Just give up. Just quit. Find another hobby. You upload an episode to a podcast hosting account, like Buzzsprout or Libsyn or Spotify for podcasters. This is where, think of like YouTube, where you would upload videos, and that's where the videos live. A podcast hosting account is where you upload the audio files of your edited podcast episodes. Podcast hosting account exists for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's where your podcast episodes live. Number 2, it provides you with an RSS feed so you can set up distribution with Apple, Spotify, and iHeart and the rest of the listening platforms out there. And then it gives you a podcast website that you can register a domain and point that domain to the website that's already built, already has the episodes in there, already ready to go. So the RSS feed is where your entire show lives. Everything that's in your podcast hosting account, the name, the description, the cover art, the episodes, all of the nuts and bolts of the podcast lives on that RSS feed. And RSS stands for really simple syndication. Mm-hmm. And it's been around for a long, long time. And if you wrote a blog and I love your content and I want your content to show up on my website, all I need is your RSS feed. So RSS has been around for quite some time, but that's how they started to make podcast content available and actually get it onto the internet. Instead of just uploading it to SoundCloud, and that's the only place you can listen to it, how do we get it from SoundCloud to multiple places? But then how do we avoid, because you can't upload anything to Apple, and you can't upload anything to Spotify. You can't upload anything to these listening platforms or distribution platforms. So that's when podcast hosting accounts came along. Yeah. So you can actually upload to one place, take the RSS feed that Buzzsprout gives you or whoever you use, and then go to Apple, submit it. Go to Spotify, submit it, and then it's done. So you're uploading in one place, and it's getting distributed to multiple locations at one time. Yep. So it's not labor intensive. So that's really the goal of an RSS feed. And you'll find that as time progresses and more listening platforms and as such pop up, your show's like on some random site like Good Pods, and you're like, what the hell's that? A majority of those sites are pulling from Apple. Apple rules the roost. 85% of podcasts are consumed. 85% are consumed on Apple, another 15 to 17% on Spotify, and then the rest trickle down with Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. So Apple continues. Spotify's trying real hard to go all in on this. I think that and YouTube is trying to attempt to do it too. And I think that they're off on it. They're way, way, way off, because this whole notion behind a video podcast is the ultimate oxymoron. Like, you're either watching a video or listening to a podcast. Mm-hmm. You are not watching a podcast. Now, you may record the recording of the podcast episode and leverage that video content for YouTube and for micro content and all that other stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. But this whole notion around, I think that's the play that YouTube is trying to make here, and Spotify with going video podcast, because the younger generation likes to watch podcasts. No, they don't. They like to consume content, and they like to watch the content that they're consuming. But podcast, again, back to the original definition, an audio file uploaded to the internet to be consumed auditorily. So I think there's, and I didn't mean to go off a little bit of a tangent there awesome. with video podcasts, but Apple stayed in their lane. Mm-hmm. We don't care about video because it's podcast. It's an audio file. And we're the largest distribution platform on the planet. And Spotify tried to do that with the Rogan deal. And, very rarely, and I'm a giant Rogan fan. I love it. It's my favorite podcast. He's the number one guy in the world, 98 countries, number one podcast. And, they introduced that video aspect on Spotify where you can upload a video file with your podcast episode. And you could technically watch a Rogan episode. I may have watched one episode. Like maybe one. And I didn't even get through the whole thing because I'm like, why am I watching two guys just talk? Yeah. If there was something to see and there was an entertainment factor there, but Kid Rock drinking 14 Bud Lights and smoking cigars with Joe Rogan, or Elon Musk smoking a joint with Joe Rogan, like there's memes for that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, it's very important, and I say that, I drive that point home because people, they get wildly offended. What are you talking about? Well, mine's a video. You can call it whatever you want. Tomato on here. I'm just giving you my perspective on how I see things, on where it's at. Being an active YouTube creator for the past 4 years and really building it from nothing, I understand what it takes to be a video creator. And it's way more work than a podcaster. Way more work, but very, very lucrative at the same time too. So, if you're going to go all out with the content stuff, just choose your lane. Let's start with a podcast. Let's get really good at becoming a podcaster. That's right. And then let's look at what it takes to launch a YouTube channel. That's right. Let's be able to, because I think everybody tries to be everything to everybody at the same time, and then next thing you know, they're not doing anything. It's that jack of all trades, master of nothing. Yeah, just keeping up with the trends and whatnot. TV started out as radio. Yeah. And then there was a point in time on Saturday night that you sat around those round wooden radios and you listened to the radio show. Mm-hmm. And that's just what went in. You read the Saturday Evening Post, and that's exactly, what had happened. And then again, like you said, the television came around. Yep. And it's almost like it's almost like there's a similar trend in how it's going, but it just hadn't fully, TV's still there, and that's at the end of the day, that's what a video podcast is it's a TV show that may or may not be good. Right. And the only time you're going to watch something like that is if it's a celebrity or somebody that you already follow that you actually want to go and see. A person of interest for sure. Because it's a podcast is it's an escape, and for you to be able to, put headphones on or go and press play and be able to just sit there and kind of, I always remember going to it was MGM Studios when I was growing up. It's Disney Studios now. And they had this area that you could go in, and it was like that showed how they did all the sounds in the movies. It was like two coconut shells would sound like horses. And then you put headphones on and it sounds like a guy's giving you a haircut. And then you hear the door close. Like, it's an audio experience that's super cool. And I think that's what podcasting does, is it allows us to embrace a story and a conversation by just sitting back and listening. To kind of prove your point a little bit, like when you shoot an episode, if the audio is good and there's problems with the video, the podcast still, it doesn't affect really the performance of it at all. Correct. It just may affect the content that you're getting out of it, but if the audio's messed up,
the whole episode's shot.
Yeah.
You can't use it.
Right. Exactly.
You got to redo it.
Right.
Or
and these days, it's you can have a camera that's plugged into your mic, your receiver, and everything's kind of just all in one encompassed thing. Most people have no idea exactly how to put all that together. What they do know how to do, though, is buy a USB mic on Amazon for $50, plug it in, make sure they have a ring light and an HD camera, and they're off to the races. Yeah. Most people can go and do that. And that's what we teach. Let's start with the basics. You don't need a studio and a Rodecaster and a bunch of expensive mics, because 6 months down the road, you may realize, I don't want to do this anymore.
I agree with that.
You got a studio sitting there collecting dust.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And most of those guys don't know how to EQ how a vocal should sound. Like, all your stuff sounds pristine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Hit Streak is powered by Team Hyder. Team Hyder has been serving you for 11 years and has racked up over 20 national and local awards for excellence in all areas. When it comes to finding the right health plan, we need to consider your family's needs and your family's budget. That's what we do to serve you. To look further and to book an appointment, visit teamhyder.com. All right, well, dude, you got a lot going on, man. So I know that you're out on the road a lot. You're doing. Talk to me about the what you guys are doing with the Apex Mastermind.
Yeah, so a guy by the name of Ryan Stewman started this about 5 years ago, and I kept hearing Apex. I'm like, what the hell's Apex? And
it's a memorable word for sure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the peak. It's the height of wherever you would, wherever you're going with whatever your goals and ambitions are. But I kept hearing about it, and I was reading Think and Grow Rich at the same time. And I think one of the laws that they teach is getting into a group of like-minded individuals.
Yeah. And
I had always heard that too, and I knew that involved that involves reaching in your pocket a little bit and spending a little bit of cheddar, which most people don't want to go do. And I heard about this, and I was following Ryan, and he made a post that said, my team's going to kill me, but I'm going to run a special. And they have 3 levels of Apex. Apex, it's now Apex, it's been rebranded to Apex Business Association, but the basic level is just a Facebook group that you can join for, I don't know, $3,000 a year or something like that. And then there's entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So the main level with the Facebook group is just to get in a group. It's all online, Facebook. They do a couple of public events a year that you can go to, but it's like your introduction to the network. The next level, the second level, is entrepreneurs, and they fly in quarterly. That's the group that I'm in, and they fly in quarterly for meetups to Dallas, and we spend a couple days together, and we do dinners and all kinds of stuff. And then there's executives, and they fly in once a month for fly-in Fridays, first Friday of the month, and they're doing 1 to 3 million plus a year. They've got a team already in place, and now they're looking to either scale and or exit from their business. The group that I'm in is now we're looking to scale and hire people and get everything in check and make sure that we're doing, our bookkeeping, and we've got an S corp filed, and we've got all the logistics, and then how do we hire and fire and the sales process. And so when I first started, it was called Entourage at the time, and I joined the group and then picked up a couple of clients based on who I met in the network within like a couple of months. So I spent like $3,000, and I made my money back like in a couple of months. And I was like, this is kind of lame, because it's a Facebook group. I made my money back. Like, I see people flying into Dallas. So I hit my sales rep up, and I was like, hey, so what's this all about? And he was like, yeah, man, it's entrepreneurs. It's the next level up. It's $10,000 a year. And I was like, whoa. He's like, yeah, plus travel. And, he said, I'm going to give you a deal at the end of the year. We're running a couple promos, but I need to know by next week, which was Christmas Eve.
No pressure.
Yeah. So I had finished that year out, and we did 101,000 that year. And I was in from like July to the end of the year. So I was doing 100 or just over $100,000 from home, having just joined Apex within 6 months. And Apex wasn't all of that business, but it started to teach me how to, the motto of Apex is becoming the best version of yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. Business is involved with that process, but who do you get to become? Ryan's got a crazy story. Been divorced twice. Was adopted as a kid. Had a rough. Went to prison twice. I mean, they had a rough start. Mm-hmm. And he went in and did something with that and turned it in, and he made a pact with God to say, you give me another shot, and I'll get out there and take these gifts to the world, and I'll do something with it. And that's what he's been able to create with Apex. So I spent 6 months in that basic level and then upgraded that December, which was, I think, December 2021. And then just started showing up and hopping on planes. And we went from 105 grand that year to 255,000 the next year.
Wow, that's awesome.
And that was a core of that was the people that I met in Apex. Now, you don't join a mastermind group to get in there and go sell and pitch people. There's no pitching. In fact, get your hand slapped for pitching.
Right.
But what you can do is show up. You could build your machine is what we call it.
Yeah.
And you can show up in the right way in integrity and serve people and help people and make sure your content game is in check. And people start to notice that stuff. And part of building your machine is starting a podcast. So when I joined, they're like, hey, we have 1,500 members at the time. We're up to about 2,200 now. Maybe like 10% of those people have a podcast, if not less. This is a perfect place for you. So I've been in since July of 2021, and my entire perspective has changed in there because it's very transient, because people, start off on one path and get off on another. And there's some people that, don't have as much integrity as they claim to be able to have. And you can imagine, as Ryan says, this is the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And I've done a lot of hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of hard stuff. And now I know why, because you're in the people business on where it's at. But I now view this as a opportunity to bring my gifts to the table. So I'm no longer flying to Dallas quarterly to get in the room and just learn and meet new people. I'm there because it's my responsibility as a leader within the organization to show up and help people understand what a true product of Apex it looks like. Where it's at, to, as Ryan would say, to be that example. The world needs more examples out there. So
Preach.
I've got a phenomenal relationship, with Apex. I've built and cultivated some incredible relationships with people in there. Continue to build relationships with Ryan and with the staff at Apex as well. And in fact, I'm headed back there in a couple of weeks for our second fly-in, and I'll be emceeing this fly-in. And I'm against my will of coming out of MC retirement, but I'm a team player and I see where there's a need there. And I hosted my first comedy show there last year. They just bought a building in Plano and gutted the first floor and turned it into
that's awesome.
A theater. Stopped paying hotel fees and everything else. Got their own theater now, so they can host events. They rent the space out. So after the first night, I was like, what are we doing tonight? We going to dinner? We doing this? We doing that? And I'm like, we're hosting a comedy show. So I brought everybody back and hosted my actual first comedy show and did a 45-minute set, and Ryan did a few minutes, and I had the old MC for Apex was in it, and he MC'd it, and it was a really good time. So it's just an opportunity to really be able to do life together with people. Very, very strong faith presence within the organization. It's Texas. You got Jesus and cattle. That's Texas for you. But in fact, Ryan has started, since we've bought the building, started hosting Wisdom Wednesdays at 7 a.m. every Wednesday morning, and it's open to whoever wants to attend. And he goes through Book of Proverbs every Wednesday. So there's 30 Proverbs, so there's one for every day. Yeah, and that's probably one of the most well scripted books in the Bible. Yeah, written by one of the most successful people in history ever, but a lot of life wisdom on there. So he teaches principles on Proverbs every Wednesday. The Wisdom Council happening there, and he talks about it a lot. He goes, God said you need to start a church of some sort, Church Apex or something like that. Yeah, you need to be able to leverage what you're doing on here, and so it feels really good to know that. It's not a Christian faith-based organization. Right. It's a business organization with a lot of people that love Jesus in it, and that's I didn't join even knowing that was going to be where it's at. It's just where we are now, and just another subtle reminder that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. No doubt. Yeah. No doubt. Let's see what else. You got so much other stuff going on. You guys have a big event in June coming up. Yeah. End of June, we're doing Builders of Authority live in downtown St. Louis. Great city in the summer. And yeah, man, we just did my good friend Adam McChesney owns a brand called Builders of Authority, brilliant digital marketer, focuses on brand building and digital marketing for service-based businesses, and people want to build personal brands. And then, of course, I'm doing the podcast stuff. So he hosted a smaller event last year in St. Louis, had about 40 people show up and said, I think I want to do it again. And he had rebranded his company and said, you want to do it together? So we did that a couple weeks ago. I had about 65 people show up. We went to the St. Louis Blues game, brought everybody to the suite that night for our VIPs, and then it went really well. It was really well received. And I said, well, if something works, let's do it again. So we're going to do it again. We're going to do Builders of Authority Live, St. Louis, Wednesday, June 26th or 27th, whatever that Wednesday is, the last, right before 4th of July on there. We'll spend the day together. It's just one day. We're going to spend 6 to 8 hours together networking, and then we're going to go to they're going to go to the Cardinals game and get a suite again and get some networking in, get some baseball in, and just be able to pour into some folks for a few days. So
is registration already open, and where can they go to
Not
register?
yet. It will be, though. So just make sure you follow me on Instagram, and you won't be able to help yourself but see it.
Well, speak of the devil. So, by the way, your URL is podcastlaunchlab.com, right?
Correct. So that's the company website to find out, our YouTube stuff's on there, our blog's on there as well. If you want to talk about starting a podcast, or like, I really want to get a hold of this guy, Sebastian, and I got some ideas. I want to flush it all out. You can go to podcastlaunchlabnow.com. That's podcastlaunchlabnow.com. It's on my Instagram profile too. That'll bring it right to my calendar, schedule a call with myself or somebody on my team to talk about what's possible. Usually I'm able to make those calls. So you'll be able to get me. We'll spend 15 or 20 minutes, talk about what's possible. I may send you back to the drawing board. I may ask you for your credit card. Those are usually the two outcomes.
Yeah.
You're either not ready yet, or you are more than ready. You're like, shut up and take my money.
That's right.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, it's at podcasts suck, like podcasts plural.
Correct.
Suck, right. So awesome.
Exactly like I say it. Podcasts suck. I got braces in July, so I was a little concerned. I told my dentist, I talk for a living, so I can't walk out of this office going, podcasts suck.
Well, dude, so my son just got his off. I'm probably gonna have to get some back on myself because I didn't do what I was supposed to do when I got him off.
That's exactly what happened. I wrote a whole comedy bit about that. It was like, I had him when I was 15 and I didn't go to my appointments. And so I ended up with a smiling train wreck for 35 years and then decided I was going to go repair all this now. And, just goes to show you can't send a boy to do a man's job.
Dude, you can't even hardly see them though. They've come so far compared to what they were like back in the day.
Yeah, man. It's like, I went in there for Invisalign and Doc was like,
I don't even know if I noticed them since you've been here, bro.
Yeah, so he put them way up. So it was like, I have not smiled for so long, or like a no teeth smile. I've been accustomed to it. And I'm like, my teeth are getting straighter. Like I can smile a little bit, and I can say podcasts suck. Like I can pronunciate it.
That's right.
Without having to worry about it. But yeah, it's wild going to the orthodontist these days. I'm the oldest guy in the orthodontist office,
They won't give you a sucker at the orthodontist.
No, they won't at all. It's like it's a whole just waiting room full of kids and teenagers. I'm sitting over there in the corner, Indian style, with my highlights magazine, like Elf. Waiting for my appointment. But hey, people say I didn't even know you needed braces. I didn't even notice until you actually had braces.
Yeah.
I said I did it for me.
That's right.
I did it for me.
That's right.
Because when I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw when I smiled. And I know it's a $5,000 problem.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That is forever.
Yeah.
It's forever.
Yeah.
Well, what else you got going on, man? So obviously you're always your keynote calendar is absolutely full. How does somebody book you if they want you to speak? What's the most common things you're speaking about to teams today?
Mainly how podcasting can radically change your life and your business if you let it. And I go through the process of, just a brief overview of what it takes to start a podcast. But we really start to dig in a little bit and start talking about I frequently, almost 95% of the time, open up every single one of my talks with a question. And that question is, who's missing out because you're not showing up? One more time. Who's missing out because you're not showing up? That's a sobering question. It really, really is. And it's terrifying for me to think that when I ask that question, it's a lot of people when I don't show up.
Yeah.
Because it's really our responsibility to take our gifts and talents out into the world and do something. But more importantly, to impact other people with it. And our dreams are attached to other people's dreams. So who are we to sit idle and sit on the sidelines? So if you're listening to this right now and you're on the sidelines and you've been on the bench and you should be in the game, use this time that you've used to consume this podcast episode to be a catalyst, to get off the bench and into the game, back into the game for the first time, whatever it may be, because someone, somewhere is missing out because we've all got gifts and talents to bring to the world. You may not think that you do, but you do. You be with it long enough.
God only made one of you.
That's it. That's it.
You know, Rory Vaden says you're most uniquely positioned or powerfully positioned and uniquely qualified to help and serve the person that you used to be.
I love that. Rory's a stud.
Yes, he is. And then I heard I can't even remember who said it. I heard this the other day that was awesome because you've used the word impact a few times, right? So basically what you're doing when you teach people podcasts is you're explaining to them how they're going to activate their impact, right?
Yep.
But check this out, what the speaker said. When you live out your God-given gifts in the marketplace, that's when you make an impact.
Yes, it absolutely
And
is.
I love that.
It really, really is. And I remember reading a book called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire from a guy called Jim Cymbala. Jim Cymbala started the Brooklyn Tabernacle with his wife
Okay.
way back when, and it's still a thriving church in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They're known for their choir, 500-person choir.
That's right.
She plays the organ, doesn't know how to read music, anything at all. The story of it's great. But one thing, other than the actual story of how that church became a reality, which is just wild in and of itself, there was one line in there, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, my biggest fear is my life passing by and God not showing up mightily on my behalf. And I thought,
That's right.
well, alrighty then. Because God's already showing up. When are you going to show up?
That's right.
You know, he's already there.
That's right.
I'm waiting on God. You don't need to wait. Maybe most of the time, very unpopular opinion. Stop praying about it. He's already told you what to do.
That's right.
Like you're spinning your wheels praying about it. There's a time and place for prayer.
That's right.
You know? But there's some situations you're not going to pray yourself out of. But some situations where massive action is the only thing that's the only medicine you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Taking him to church today, Hyder.
that's right, baby. I love it. I freaking love it. Well, you got to take action. Remember, that was what I wrote in big capital letters at the very
Have to.
beginning of this thing. Is you're a guy that just knows how to take action.
Just keep showing up.
Yeah. So anybody that where do they go to book you?
Just shoot me a DM. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Say I heard you on the Hitstreak, and we got an event coming up. Love to talk to you about coming in to speak.
Perfect.
What I'm able to do with me being a comic, I'm able to give a talk, and if there's a social element of the event, a cocktail hour, something like that on there, we're able to work a comedy component on there too. And then I'll work with your video team and your production team and your AV team to put together some sort of makeshift podcast setup at your event too. So that's kind of the triple threat there, where you bring me in to give a talk. We could tell some jokes, and then I can work with your team to figure out a way. If it's not already there, it should already have a podcast component there at the event, but sometimes it's not on there. But that's kind of my differentiator, because a lot of people out there with, I want to speak, but you want somebody in there that's going to bring the thunder and leave folks different.
I freaking love it, man. I love it. The Hitstreak is powered by RAC Financial. When it comes to your credit card merchant processing, RAC Financial is efficient, reliable, and trusted. At the end of the day, when it comes to processing your credit card payments, they make it simple, the way it's supposed to be. Check out RAC Financial. Well, brother, as we bring this sucker to a close, man, is there any final messages, final words, or anything else that you want to share with everybody?
Yes, you can. I'm going to say it right to the camera. I'm not going to look at Nick when I say it. Yes, you can. You can call that woo-woo. You can call that whatever you want to call, but sometimes we need a little bit of woo-woo to get us off the bench and into the game. I want to remind you, if you're listening to this right now, yes, you can. You're probably thinking, why in the world is this dude giving me this rah-rah session at the end of the episode? Because I want to remind you that yes, you can. Because somewhere along the line, somebody told you couldn't do something, and you believed them. And you took it a step further and started living your life according to that story that isn't even true. So remember who you are, and that yes, you can. And when you get off the bench and into the game, somebody's life's being radically changed and impacted, and it's probably yours.
I can't think of a better way to kind of close that sucker out. Let's make sure everybody knows where they can contact you. I want all of them. So both your podcasts are, one of them's Podcast Suck, right?
Podcastsuck.com,
Yep.
beyondthestorypodcast.com. All my links are in my Instagram. We send everybody Instagram.
Perfect.
My link tree is right there, and has all my relevant links. Book a call, book me, listen to a podcast, YouTube channel. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's always like, it's always a pleasure to be in proximity to you, because
Likewise,
the
my brother.
energy is massive.
Thank you, my
it's
brother.
absolutely massive.
Appreciate you, bro.
And then again, he's in town to speak, right? So we were able to double dip a little bit.
Yes, we were. We got me all primed up.
That's right, baby.
Now I'm going to have to go get a little Tennessee bourbon and think about my talk tomorrow,
Come on. Come on. Well, dude, thanks so much for hanging and chopping it up with me, pouring into everybody. Again, I'm so passionate about the world of podcasting. It's crazy how far I've come, and I wouldn't. You introduced me to a podcast, and that is a fact.
You've been doing a great job, brother. I'm proud of you, man. Keep up.
I sure appreciate it. We're having a blast doing it.
Absolutely. Tell that lovely bride of yours I said hello.
You know it.
Yeah, man.
You know it. Well, folks, we've been hanging with Sebastian Rusk, the founder of the Podcast Launch Lab, a very sought after keynote speaker and comedian. And you just found out he has 2 podcasts himself. That if you're one of the few that ain't listening already, go on ahead and check those out. Right, you will be blessed. And again, it's always a pleasure. And anytime he's in town, he will be back. Mark my words, he will be back. He will be back. Well, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.